Superman, Warworld Apocalypse, issue 1, Philip Kennedy Johnson, and 4 writers who I didn't write down because there was 4 of the bloody things. So I'll tell you that in a second.
You mean artists?
Oh, sorry, artists, yes.
Yeah, you said 4 writers, and it's just 1.
Yeah, so sorry, so yes, it is. So, yeah, we got Brandon Peterson, Will Conrad, Max Rayner, and Miguel Madoncha all on art. That is a hefty chunk.
And it did feel like they broke it up into places. Like what's going on with Superman felt like it was one artist.
Yeah.
Versus what's going on with Orphan, and at the Star Forges was an artist. And then I feel like the main battle with Midnighter and Manchester Black was another. So it was I think it was handled pretty deftly, but yeah, kind of stinks that Federici wasn't a part of it.
Yeah, it handled it about as well as it could have done, but I still wish they didn't have to handle it.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
It's kind of where it is.
So how did you feel about it being a fitting end to this Warworld saga?
Yeah, I thought it was a solid ending.
Me too.
I think
he
stuck
the landing.
I think if I have any complaints about the saga as a whole, it's that maybe in the sort of middle to back half, some of the single issues weren't that super satisfying on their own. I'm sure that's something that'll clear up when you just read it as a trade or as a collection. But I think the ending just sort of re-hits on all the points that I kind of liked about it in the first place. So Superman being selfless, going to save wanting to save the kid after the kid dies at the hands of Mongol. Which, by the way, I mean, I kind of almost wish they didn't bring the kid back, and it actually got left that Mongol just killed this Philosian child like that. I think that would have been a big.
Although I do like what he represents there, because he is the by the end there, the fire of Olgren personified because of Superman's selfless act. So I do like that, but yeah, that was a shock that they actually went there. But yeah, and I feel like it was chaotic, but like a planned out chaotic, where it really felt like we were in the thick of an actual battle, like when it was bouncing around from each of the parts. Like I never got lost, but it felt like there was a lot going on. So I feel like all 4 of the artists hit that pretty well. Yeah,
I do wonder if maybe the last few issues before this would have been better off, like giving 1 issue to the Superman plot, 1 issue to the Midnighter and stuff plot, one to the Orphan. Just because I feel like I think the last couple of issues suffered from having just a little bit of all these threads, as opposed to maybe being more focused one by one. Yeah. And then this issue has the time and the page count to really finish them all off.
Where I almost felt like it would have been nice to have like specials too, so like a Midnighter special instead of having his issue. Because it felt like there's a lot of story that happened in between issues. Because like here at the end, they remind Midnighters, like, see, it's a good thing we didn't blow up the Star Forges, And I was like, oh yeah, there's a whole issue about that.
Yeah, which I remembered as soon as they mentioned it. But obviously there's a lot of moving parts by the time you've gotten to the end of this. It's easy to sort of misplace some of them. But yeah, you got all the fighting going on. Obviously, some of the big threads going throughout is trying to bring Light Ray back. Omac's trying to do that, and Omac ultimately sacrifices to do
themselves.
So. Yeah. So that's kind of a big moment in Light Ray. It is returned at the end, but it's sort of an emotional thing.
Such a cool thing too, because Light Ray goes from being whatever that what are they called? Unborn? Not unborn.
Unmade?
Unmade, there you go. Goes from being the unmade version of themselves, and then you see the Black Racer there. And it was just a creepy, it was a nice fitting tribute for Omac, but just the Black Racer being there after she comes back was a cool little beat.
Yeah. Obviously, Superman charging Mongol after he kills the kid is a big moment. These felt quite impactful, which I really appreciate. So the big thing, though, the cliffhanger last issue was Acrylics had been working for Mongol, and it turns out in this that he's actually still against Mongol, but he has been working with them this whole time because he ultimately wants to beat him, because he believed that working with them and betraying him later would be the way to go. So there's kind of this, like, I did appreciate at the end of this issue when Acrylics actually is the one who kills Mongol and sort of punches him, because ultimately, the whole plan to get the sun turned to sort of power up Superman and all the other Thelosians works. So all the Thelosians start to glow, and it's like, oh shit, we're all Supermen now. Same happens to Acrylics, and he uses his power to kill Mongol. And afterwards, he's to Superman. He's like, you'll probably never see me quite as an ally again or whatever. But and Superman's like, yeah, I don't think I can, because it doesn't matter that ultimately you kind of help win the fight. Like, you still betrayed everyone. You were still working with Mongol. So that Superman would find the Olgrin thing, and that's what it was all about. It was all helping Mongol get that.
He wasn't a double agent because he was working for himself the whole time.
Yeah,
he was doing whatever he needed to beat Mongol. He was just a force, that kept moving, and I like that, because we had speculated that Superman would beat Mongol and take over Warworld and then leave it to the Warzoons. I was not expecting Acrylics to usurp Mongol, which I think was a nice touch, because now it's like, well, Warworld's still standing. There's still a new Mongol. Can he be trusted? And then we get that epilogue at the end where it seems like Acrylics has a war to fight on his own. And so I did like that twist there at the end.
Yeah, I think just the idea that Superman can't just quite forgive him, because it's what he did was still, ultimately a betrayal. It was still this dark thing. Yep. It still got this child killed, and yeah, he was able to bring him back, but the Acrylics wouldn't have known that.
Point.
Yeah. So I appreciate that there's still some weight to that decision, and it does make him the shady sort of shades of grey character. Yeah. Light Ray's whole thing to come back actually is tricking. Sorry, not Light Ray, Apollo. So Apollo gets tricked. Manchester Black tricks him into thinking the Justice League is there, and there was actually a second where I thought, oh, this feels a bit anticlimactic, bringing the Justice League in now.
I got so confused, and then I'm looking at him, I'm like, why are they all in Warworld gear? And then I turn the page, and it's Manchester Black doing a mental thing.
Yeah. And
it was a very nice touch.
Yeah, basically, it has Cyborg connect to the back of his neck, which is where the controlling thing. Yeah. So he kind of tricks him into ripping out the thing that's letting Mongol control him, and sure enough, that solves the problem. So it's a good moment. I liked it a bit. Obviously, I think the moment where Thelosians realize they all have this strength, the idea that Superman's been telling them they have this strength the whole time, but now it's made literal by the sun's the sun engine powering them up. Yep. And it's a neat way to sort of punctuate it by like, okay, now it's literal. Now you actually have this power. Like, you're struggling up until now in fighting, even though you were weak, and even though it felt impossible, is now paying off. You're rewarded for your faith in Superman. Like, there's a nice kind of ring to that as well. So, and the way it reveals Superman's get his powers back is also quite neat, where Mongol blasts him off into like the stratosphere basically, and then you think, oh, that must be him dead, but then the heat vision comes flying down from the skies above.
Such a good moment.
It's a neat moment,
and because I looked at him and I was going, where'd Superman go? Right, and then you see his silhouette in like the clouds, and then the heat vision goes, and it is a fist pump moment.
Yeah. Is it technically a silhouette when it's like white and not black? I guess it kind of is.
I don't know, because you still see the outline of him.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, it's in the yellow blast of energy. You see just this white outline of Superman inside it.
Yeah.
It reminds me more of someone getting electric shocked or like something like that, like in a cartoon. It's got that kind of effect to it. And I'm just wondering if that's technically still a silhouette, or if it matters if it's light or dark. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's the exact same, by the way. But it's got a really nice flow to that page actually, because that yellow blast is going up, and that's in the upper left panel, and then the big panel underneath is the red beam of the heat vision coming down. It creates kind of a nice flow to it between the two beams. So the page looks quite good as a result, I think. And then you get the big, glory moment of him floating in the sky. The lightning's hit him, and he's got electricity all around him. It's really neat stuff. So yeah, and you get this thing as well where Acrylics killing Mongol. Like, Superman was never going to kill Mongol. Like, that's not what he does. So
no, and so that's where I thought Johnson was going with this, is like he was going to show the people of Warworld that Mongol is just as mortal as they are, right? And that they don't need a Mongol, as he would be. So I could have seen them doing the Superman's the last Mongol, and so to Warworld, that's where that ends. But no, man, the Mongol who is now the Mongol who was. So thanks to Acrylics, and so does it.
Wait, what? Say that again.
So the Mongol who is, because that's what he was,
Yes.
right? Is now the Mongol who was.
Okay, technically that's true, but that can also mean the opposite, because the way I heard you say that the first time you said it is the Mongol who is the Mongol who was, as in the Mongol who is right now is the Mongol who was before.
Yeah, no, that's not what I meant. I meant as in title, as that they were calling them. But it's like, is Acrylics just another, because he's so self-serving? Like, is this just going to be a repeating thing with Warworld that no matter who's in charge, right? Do they have the culture to sustain? Is he just going to take the Phalosians now and leave?
It is worth mentioning as well that Acrylics' plan was to get the Fire of Olgrin. The fact that the Suns gave him Superman powers was not something he counted on. No. It was just kind of like he called an audible basically when this happened instead. Yeah. So it's worth mentioning that because I think there's a risk of you thinking it's too convoluted, that he was planning for all this to happen so he'd get this power. That wasn't his plan. His plan was just to get the fire.
Because he knew that they were going to do to switch over the engines, but I don't think he thought that it would give him the same level of powers, right? Like,
well, even if he did, he wasn't necessarily banking on that part of the plan working. Like, no,
he was banking on Superman giving over the fires of Olgrin. So well,
it's not even just that. Like, he wouldn't have known that was part of the plan when he first started doing all this. Like, when he started this whole this scheme from the start, when he started talking to Superman, his plan the whole time was to get to the Fire of Olgrin. This second plan to like change the engine to turn it into a yellow sun or something like a yellow sun, that was something someone else suggested along the way. So it's not like he could have predicted that outcome or that possibility. So
no, the outcome that he was seeking was of killing Mongol, right? Like, that was all he was focused on.
Yeah, with the Fire of Olgrin, though, that's the point I'm making. Right. He got this second avenue of doing it by chance. It's not this convoluted thing where, sometimes villains like, oh, they planned to get captured and released, and then they planned for this other thing to happen. It's like, okay, I don't really believe that this could have all played out the way he thought it was going to. So I'm trying to compliment it, basically.
It's all good, and it is again. I keep saying it was a nice twist because I was not expecting that, and it was a shock when he kills Mongol, because I just figured, like, this is such a good villain for Superman. Like, we might see Mongol turn up another time, So, being gone,
there'll always be another Mongol for sure. So Acrylics leaves by saying, I still count you as a friend and ally, Kal-El, and he's like, I don't see how that's possible. Like, Superman's clearly not feeling friendly with this dude right now. So it's this interesting thing where he still taught Acrylics hope. That's his last thing that Acrylics says to him, but obviously he's done everything in this darker way that you can't even compare it to Superman Batman, because Batman still wouldn't do this shit, but in that same way where he's accepting a lot of Superman's teachings, but he's still going about it in a darker way. If anything, this is like this is closer to like Superman's Ghostmaker, better, might I add, but closer to in a sense.
I didn't think about it like that, but that does make sense, is that he has the grayer moral compass than Superman.
We have a couple of scenes after all the war goes down. So we finally had a callback to the United Planets guys on Daxam. The one who kind of like stopped any support coming to Warworld. I loved that they came back to this little thread, because I loved this when they did it back in because this was early on in the saga. This character stopped any help from coming, and he's here, and Acrylics comes to see him, so it's this idea that he's maybe going to still get his comeuppance for what he's done.
Right. Because he is, and Acrylics threatens the United Planets as a whole for what they allowed to happen to his planet, which I forget the name. It's not, they're Phalosians, but they're from a different planet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can't remember the name of the planet off the top of my head, but yeah. So it's also kind of like this thing where, are they going to go to war with Daxam and the United Planets? Like, is there just going to be some down the line, some super people war? Because don't forget, Daxamites have the same powers. They're also descended from Kryptonians. So
Yeah. I was glad they brought that thread up because I thought it was one of the more interesting things they set up back at the start of the arc. And we go back to Metropolis, and Lois is writing about how she misses Superman and how that when he comes back, she wants that day to be just for her, and the world can have him back a day later. So it's kind of a sweet thing. You get this sort of morning glow, the sunrise over Metropolis, and she gets swooped out the window, and the final page is them kissing in front of the sunrise and over the top of the city.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's a nice big kind of romantic moment. Obviously, we're getting the Kal-El Returns crossover between Superman and Action Comics. So we'll be getting that over the next month or two.
Yep.
So that's cool. Yeah, it was a very satisfying conclusion. It kind of wrapped up all the things. I think, the big thing that maybe hurt the saga the most is probably the fact that we started swapping artists around very willy-nilly. And it was very inconsistent for the back half. I don't even think Federici did any of the because it was kind of split into two arcs. I don't think Federici did any of the second one, I want to say.
I'm trying to think back. I think you're right. I don't think.
And if he did, it was like one issue because I do not remember much of him at all in that second half.
Yeah. Which
is a shame, because I think it's still a very special Superman story. I still think it's going to read incredibly well as a collection, as a whole thing. All, I don't know if it's like 18 issues or whatever in total, but I do think like that like A-tier all-timer like quality maybe is just slightly dinged by the art being as inconsistent as it was.
The context of the story and stuff, it is an all-time story, but with the kind of inconsistent art, maybe, but still I would definitely recommend this as it's up there now in the hey, I want to read a good Superman comic. You can put them on this.
Don't get me wrong, Johnson's run is still one of my favorite Superman runs already because of this, and I'm excited to see what he's doing now back on Earth with Superman and intermingling with Taylor's Superman as well. So I'm curious to see where we go from here. But it was definitely a very worthwhile, year and a half.
Because we still have those hanging threads of what's her name, that's on Earth. They have to save her.
Yeah.
Because Conduit exploded the Genesis fragment. Also, the world governments are still kind of pissed at Superman for him not giving up the Genesis fragment and getting involved. So I'm curious to see where those threads pick up and how it goes. But Johnson, thoroughly enjoying his take on Superman, going all the way back to those Future State issues. I feel like this hit those tones of why Superman's special. So
so his run's almost 2 years actually. Well, actually not yet, because it's only just
not quite. And remember, he had that crossover that was kind of John Carter of Mars-esque with John and Superman. And then that led to...
Well, that's still part of his run, though.
Yeah, but that was where it started, right?
Well, no, but his run started with Future State, though, which was the start of last year, which is my point. I'm saying we're...
Okay.
We're...
That feels a longer time ago, though, so that's why I'm getting...
No, that was January 2021, so...
Good Lord.
Yeah, so we're it's not quite 2 years because we're only at the start of September, but it's looking lately that based on the fact that he's still in the book on solicits up to November, it's looking lately that he's going to at least hit 2 years on the book, which is exciting. And he got to say so much about the character with the Warworld saga stuff that I'm excited to see what he says now that Superman's back on Earth and maybe doing more traditional Superman things as a result. But with all that said, Matt, what are you rating the Warworld Apocalypse special?
I'm giving this an 8.
That's interesting. That seems a bit muted for you. Given this is the ending of the big saga.
Yeah, but it's really good. But like you said, the art was kind of up and down, and it for all of that. I was gonna give the 8.5, but then I toned it down a half step.
I think I will go the 8.5. I think enough of the emotional resonance impacted me that I'm happy to give it, even with the caveats of the art being obviously inconsistent. And I mean, most of the art is good. I don't think there was any of the art that I thought was bad. So I mean, that's good. But obviously, consistent style would be appreciated. I do think the one time the art change feels like it makes whereas I would have argued that even if you had say Federici on all of the issue, I think those last few pages with Lois and Metropolis being a different artist, that was the one time when the art changed where it felt really natural, that we're back on Earth, so all of a sudden it looks very different. That one moment made sense to me. So even if we did have one consistent artist, I might have argued that those last 3 or 4 pages should have still been someone else. just to really sell that we're back on a different world again.